What's going on, everyone? I'm back, and I'm taking a look at a fantasy football mock draft again here through the ESPN platform. As you can all see, it's a 12-team PPR mock, and I'm going to have the 7th pick overall. Now, I did wait a little bit for myself to go ahead and do another one of these mock drafts. I did want to have the rankings, kind of see how they fluctuate, how they adjust themselves from website to website, and take into account some injuries, some preseason performances, some of the hype in general. And, I can definitely see a difference already. Before, albeit it was early, probably a month ago, these rankings were, I would say, pretty different. For example, I think now seeing Saquon Barkley and Alvin Kamara in the top 7 is pretty standard. Looking at some of these wide receivers, I would say they've moved up a little bit. Julio and DeAndre and Odell in the top, starting at the 8th spot. I'm a little bit surprised that Melvin Gordon is all the way at the 15th spot, but I don't think that's an accurate representation, because I would say for the most part, we all have our personal rankings, and I think we all have kind of evaluated Melvin Gordon as probably an end of the first round guy, and I'd be really surprised if he lasts until the start of the second round. And obviously every single platform has different rankings, kind of like how I mentioned, whether it's ESPN, NFL, Yahoo, everything's going to be a little bit different. But kind of turning our attention to these picks so far, the top 4 without a question is going to be the top 4 running backs, in my opinion. Some combination of Bell, Gurley, Johnson, and Zeke, and that's exactly what we're seeing here. Then I have the 7th pick overall, so I do think that's a pretty nice spot here to have, because you pretty much guarantee yourself at least either Saquon, Alvin Kamara, or Antonio Brown. And if it's not Barkley or Kamara, I think having Antonio Brown at the 7th spot overall, extremely valuable. And I would not be upset at having Antonio Brown. Obviously, as I'm talking about Antonio Brown, he gets drafted, but that's all right. Alvin Kamara just went, so that's going to go ahead. Leave me with Saquon Barkley. I don't want to go ahead and get one of these wide receivers quite yet, because I do think Barkley has a little bit of a higher ceiling, and I've said it before, I'll keep on saying it, and I'll say it again right now. I value, a top-notch running back in the first half of the first round more so than a top-notch wide receiver, because, basically with the running backs, you can go ahead and get a runner and a pass catcher in one. And since this is PPR, it does make a difference. Alvin Kamara obviously wouldn't be rated as high in a standard format. He loses a lot of value there, in my opinion. But now we see Kareem Hunt going afterwards. I think this is going to be where we see the run on wide receiver start a little bit, just because they're the next best available players. But at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised if Leonard Fournette and Melvin Gordon are taken off the board first. But kind of like how we predicted DeAndre Hopkins goes here. And interestingly enough, at the start of the season, or at the start of the off-season, early fantasy season with these mock drafts, it was possible to go ahead and land Leonard Fournette and Melvin Gordon if you picked towards the end of the first round. That's why I was such a big fan of picking towards the end of the first round, getting immediately two, still, I wouldn't say tier 1 running backs, but right underneath that, back to back. I wouldn't care if I would have to wait, 20 picks afterwards to go ahead and make another selection, just because Leonard Fournette and Melvin Gordon is such a deadly combination. And of course, we see Melvin Gordon go right now with the second to last pick in the first round. So, obviously he didn't last until the second round. I still do think that these rankings have a little bit of tweaking to come their way. And probably, I think Leonard Fournette will jump up a little bit. I think Melvin Gordon will jump up a little bit. Dalvin Cook, I think that's a good spot for him. Keenan Allen, I'm a fan of Keenan Allen, but I think value-wise, I would rather go and get a running back at that point in time. As good as I know as he is in PPR, I think his value is really high after last year. And, I don't think I'm quite willing to go ahead and spend a late first round, early second round pick on him. But regardless, you know, there he went. Keenan Allen right there, 3rd pick in the 2nd round. And Christian McCaffrey, wow, Christian McCaffrey beats out Leonard Fournette. I find that a little bit surprising, just because that offensive line in Carolina has a lot of issues. You know, missing offensive talent in terms of Khalil, also missing Andrew Norwell. Well, not missing, they completely lost him to the Jaguars in the offseason, and then Williams on the right side of that offensive line. So that O-line has a lot of questions in my mind for the Panthers. And then McCaffrey's also going to get his touchdowns vultured, not only from C.J. Anderson, but from Cam Newton. So, you know, I do find that a little bit interesting. Also, on top of that, I would say having Leonard Fournette go after him. I realize it's a PPR league, but man, that offense is built for the perfect playing style for Leonard Fournette. But let's get back to our picks here, because Devonta Freeman just went. Would have loved to have had a chance to land Leonard Fournette, but you know, it was not meant to be. So instead, I'm going to go ahead. As much as I like to go running back, I think the next best available player here is wide receiver by far, and I'm between Michael Thomas and Devontae Adams, and I'll go with Thomas. I think, you know, with that Green Bay offense, obviously Aaron Rodgers, in my opinion, best quarterback in the NFL, and it's going to be a deadly offense. But, you know, don't sleep on a guy like Randall Cobb. I think he's going to do a lot better than people anticipate, and I think ultimately he's going to take away some opportunities from Devontae Adams. While Michael Thomas, to me, in the passing game for the Saints is the clear-cut #1 guy. I don't see anyone encroaching in his territory. Obviously, you have to worry a little bit about Kamara and Ingram, but, you know, I could make the same case for Jamal Williams, Ty Montgomery, and Green Bay. Obviously not as big of a factor, but still, it'll happen. And I could have gone, you know, Gronkowski possibly, but I think way too early in the 2nd round to go with Gronk. Could have gone McKinnon, but again, I'd rather not take McKinnon in the 2nd round. I'd rather go ahead and take him early 3rd round. I think first pick with the 3rd round, while some people might say is high, I think that's a good spot for McKinnon to go. And in PPR leagues, especially, I don't have a problem with that. I think he's going to get plenty of targets. That hamstring issue didn't prove to be, you know, as bad as it could have been. Reports are that he's going to be okay. And then we see Joe Mixon and Jordan Howard go. I think that's pretty standard, I would say. You know, Mixon, Howard. I would go ahead and have Mixon over Jordan Howard. I just think that that offense has a much bigger ceiling than that of the Bears, and also Mixon is a better pass catcher. Now, kind of looking what's going on here, Stephon Diggs just went. I'm not gonna lie, taking Zach Ertz is kind of tempting right now, so I could kind of secure that tight end position and not have to worry about it later on. I do think having a tight end that you can go ahead and draft and not worry about streaming from week to week, and a guy that can put up wide receiver 1 numbers is a really nice boost to your roster. But I know if I don't get this guy right now in Doug Baldwin, I'm not going to be able to get him later. So, I don't know, some people might call it a reach, but middle of the 3rd round, getting Doug Baldwin, I would get him in the start of the 3rd round, heck, you know, with the first pick in the 3rd round if I didn't have a wide receiver. But I think immediately my wide receiver group right now is pretty strong. Michael Thomas, Doug Baldwin. We'll see what happens in the middle of the 4th round, but really happy how things have shaped up so far. If a guy like Kenyon Drake is still there in the 4th round, I wouldn't mind adding him. Royce Freeman, Derrick Henry, Alex Collins, Ajayi, just looking at some of these other running backs. I like Lamar Miller, but I think he could potentially fall to the 5th round. We'll see what happens there. And unfortunately, Jarvis Landry just went. I would have loved to go ahead and pair him up with the receivers that I had. I think that would have been a heck of a combination. I think in PPR leagues, he's the guy to own out of that wide receiver group. And then in standard leagues, it's Josh Gordon. You know, I was a fan of Jarvis Landry before the news of Gordon being out for a little bit came out. And then I'm still a fan of his when Gordon is now set to return. So I think Landry's going to have a big part in that Cleveland offense. So right now at this point, the guys that I'm looking at probably honestly would be the aforementioned Josh Gordon, because I still think he has a very high ceiling, and having him as what would be my flex player I don't think that's bad at all. And kind of crossing my fingers that Kenyon Drake falls to me. I think, I think he's going to be a good pass catching running back. I know a lot of people have Kenyon Drake labeled as a guy that's going to bust, but I think at this point, if I went any other running back, they don't have as high of a ceiling as Kenyon Drake. And, middle of the 4th round, I think that's pretty good value for Drake. I don't have an issue with that. Looking at some of the other running backs, just straight running backs, like I mentioned, Royce Freeman. Personally, I'd rather have Kenyon Drake, but he just went, of course, so time to adjust a little bit on the fly. And like I said, if he's still there, I'm taking Josh Gordon. We'll see what happens. It might be a little bit of a fall off in running back talent, but I'll take my chances and see what happens. Yep, so Josh Gordon's still there, and I like the upside with Gordon. The note is there's no precise timetable for when he's going to be available. I think he'll be available week 1. The guy, before his little hiatus, everyone was expecting him to be there week 1. It was a hiatus of probably about 2.5, 3 weeks, something, if it was even that. So I'm going to go ahead, get Josh Gordon. If I had gone another wide receiver, it would have probably been Marvin Jones would have been the guy I would have looked at. And I think if I had gone Lamar Miller, maybe a little bit of a reach, and I think the point scoring for Josh Gordon has a little bit of a higher ceiling. And, worst case scenario, I think if I'm not happy after a big game, it'd be easier to take advantage of trading a guy like Josh Gordon compared to a guy like Lamar Miller if he's struggling, just because, again, I think the ceiling for Gordon is a lot higher. But the way it's shaping up now, there's a possibility I can still land Lamar Miller. We'll see. The auto pick here might have something else to say about it. But kind of looking at these other players, Aaron Rodgers just went. Dion Lewis just went. I'm looking at a guy in Rex Burkhead that I wouldn't mind having. But you know what? Best of both worlds. I got Josh Gordon and Lamar Miller, so I'm pretty happy about that, honestly. In the long run, I would have liked it better if it was Jarvis Landry instead of Josh Gordon, like I said, because it's PPR, but I'm really happy about landing Lamar Miller. So now I don't have to reach on a guy maybe like a Rex Burkhead if I hadn't had Miller there. I think Miller will end up being a flex / running back number 2 kind of talent. I think, with that offense for the Texans, I've said it before. Heck, I've made an entire video about Lamar Miller. If he doesn't figure it out this year, then I don't think he'll ever put it together. So for that reason, I have high hopes for Lamar Miller. To me, it's now or never for him. And I think that's going to be a very nice motivational factor. Also, on top of that, if for some reason Deshaun Watson does struggle at the start of the season with throwing the football, I do think the Texans are gonna go ahead and take some pressure off him and put some more of that pressure on Lamar Miller. So I think that'll be a nice little boost for Miller when it's all said and done, if that scenario does occur. Then looking at some of these other players, I could go quarterback, but I think they'll still be there at the 7th round. So instead, what I'm going to do, I'm going with a bench player here in Randall Cobb that I absolutely love. I think he's absolutely a starting wide receiver on your team. In my opinion, he's going to be a wide receiver number 2 when it's all said and done. People are sleeping on Randall Cobb way too much. Now, looking at some of these other positions that are still left, I've got quarterback, tight end. Wouldn't hurt to go ahead and add another running back just for insurance. Some of those guys would probably be a Chris Carson. Let's see who else is still there. Chris Carson. Not a fan of Ronald Jones. Maybe Carlos Hyde. Maybe Kerryon Johnson. I like Jordan Reed as a tight end later on that I could... Well, never mind. I was saying I like Jordan Reed as a potential tight end I can target later on, but wasn't meant to be. Let's just put it that way. So I like Marlon Mack potentially. I think he's got some upside. Same with Jamal Williams. The the downfall with that, I think, would be getting too many Packers, both running back and wide receiver. And I see both of them being as potential starters. And I'm a personal fan of diversifying my lineup as much as I can. Unless it's a quarterback to running back, then I think I can make an exception. But obviously it has to be, a viable quarterback to running back combination. So if I had Deshaun Watson, which as soon as I said that name, he gets drafted, I wouldn't be upset at it. So now we're back on the clock. Let's see what we can do here. Quarterback. I think let's look at the list here. I think Andrew Luck was the next best available guy. I'm gonna go ahead, hold off on Luck. I can get a Kirk Cousins later on. Next best available player, I'm either between Marquise Goodwin and Chris Carson. And I know I said I have, I don't like doing the wide receiver running back tandem, but I do think I am a little bit more strapped at the running back position right now. So I'm going to go ahead and draft Chris Carson, who does have, I think, a nice little upside right now. And since I do have a little bit more cushion with the wide receivers on the bench, I think the running back position is a little bit more valuable just at this point in time. And let's kind of see what's still left out there. I'm going to go ahead, probably queue up a tight end and a quarterback and call it a day with this draft, because I do think we've put together a pretty good roster size-wise here. We've got the core of the roster together and also started filling out the bench nicely. So the tight ends I would look at, probably Kyle Rudolph, Jack Doyle, Trey Burton, those top three guys. And then quarterback, I'm looking at, if he's still there, possibly Andrew Luck, Kirk Cousins. I like a Matt Ryan. I like a Jimmy Garoppolo. So I think we have plenty of options. Now, as far as how this is progressing, Ben Roethlisberger after Chris Carson, then Marquise Goodwin, then Pierre Garçon. And this will start going fast now with some of these people on auto pick. Andrew Luck just went, so never mind about Luck. But if he's still there, I'll probably go ahead and snag Kirk Cousins, unless there's some tight end that, I might actually go, I was going to say I might go Kyle Rudolph, but no, I won't. I'm going to go ahead and wait on that too. This has been a nice example of a draft where every single time you mention a player out loud, they're literally drafted, that second. So at least it's a nice exercise in adjusting on the fly. I do appreciate that. Now, one more pick has to be made before me, and I'm going to go ahead and say I'm going to go address the tight end position, because I do think there's a little bit more of a drop-off at the tight end position than the quarterback position. So let's see what happens. Personally, I would go with Jack Doyle here. I trust that offense for the Colts more. I think, I personally believe Luck is going to be healthy. And I've gone on record saying how much I dislike Mitchell Trubisky. So for that reason, I'm going Jack Doyle here. And then I'm going to queue up a couple of quarterbacks and give you guys an overall kind of grade for how I think this wound up. So I'm queuing up Kirk Cousins. I like Matt Ryan this year. I like Jimmy Garoppolo. So maybe with all these auto picks, it'll get back to me and I can go ahead and even get a quarterback. But all right, let's break it down. Starting at what I think is my best positional group is the wide receivers. Michael Thomas, who I think is a right outside the top 5 wide receiver. Very happy with that as my wide receiver number 1. Then I've got a guy in Doug Baldwin, who I think is another wide receiver number 1. So I love the combination. Like I said before, Josh Gordon as a flex guy, I think he has a very high ceiling. Would have loved to get Jarvis Landry instead, but it's okay. I love my bench so far in Randall Cobb and Chris Carson. To me, Cobb is a starting wide receiver. Top 15 wide receiver potential right outside of it. Then the running back group, starting with Saquon Barkley. I like the usage factor here. Lamar Miller, a guy that has another high potential, high ceiling kind of year. So I'm happy with that. And then I've also got Chris Carson as a potential backup. Jack Doyle, he's a nice tight end as far as what was left available. I think it was either between him and Trey Burton. Would have liked to go ahead and get Kyle Rudolph or Jordan Reed, but again, wasn't meant to be. But like I said, I like Jack Doyle. and we'll make it back to me to round this out with a quarterback pick. So overall, I'd give my wide receivers an A. Probably give my running backs a B-, also factoring the rookie factor for Saquon Barkley. Tight end, you know, C+. And then quarterback, you know, unless you're getting Aaron Rodgers, I don't think you're going to go ahead and get a guy that's that groundbreaking. And I'll go ahead and get Kirk Cousins, so I'd probably give him a B as far as a quarterback rating. Overall, I'd probably say this roster, you know, not too shabby. Probably a B, potential of a B+ kind of roster. But as always, let me know what you guys think. Do you guys agree? Do you agree with the picks in each round? Would you guys have gone after different guys? How would you grade this draft? And if you have any other comments or questions, let me know. Let me hear it. And if you enjoyed, make sure to like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in future videos.